I'm glad to welcome you here at another meeting, of the Gameplay Studies, Design, Criticism, Online Research Seminar today, hosted by High School of Economics in Moscow. Today, our keynote speaker is Alexandr Ветушинский, who is already here in this chat room, and he will give his talk on a brand new model of gamification. So please, Alexander, you may start talking.
Okay, thanks, Alexey. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here tonight. Of course, I'm a little bit worried because I'm not so cool in English speaking, but I'll try my best. And by the way, first of all, maybe, forgot the words I want to say. Okay, it's not really important. Okay, I think I can enter the demonstration of my screen. I hope you all see it. I don't have a lot of time last weeks, and because of it, my presentation is not really good. It's not really polished. But I think the main information still there, so you can find it here. Okay, and of course, I need to say something about myself. My name is Alexandr Ветушинский, and I'm research fellow at Philosophy Faculty of Lomonosov Moscow State University. I'm a lecturer at Art and Design School at High School of Economics and Institute of Business and Design, Game Design Department in the HSE and in BND. Also, I'm an expert at Sber Gamification Lab. So this topic interests me not only as a researcher and theorist, but also as a practitioner. So because of it, I'm a little bit worried too, because this is not really a speech of research field or some game studies, but this is not really a topic from a practitioner. It's something in the middle of it, and because of it, I'm too a little bit nervous. But okay, we'll see what we have done today. So my paper consists of two parts. This is my table of contents. The first is scholastic. It's because I want to discuss the definition of gamification. Yes, I want to return to the seemingly forgotten topic of the most adequate definition of gamification. Of course, I'm well aware that gamification research has long gone without discussing the definition, since the academic field itself is already well defined. But this is not the case in Russia. There is enough confusion about understanding of gamification in Russian academic journal, so returning to the topic seems to me extremely important. And I'm sure that such a brief analysis, which I will present today, is important not only in Russia, because in our understanding of gamification, we have gone much further than the classical definition suggests. The second part is about game design. Very briefly, I will outline the main principles of the gamification model that I'm working on. Of course, you might think that first I'll just talk about how I understand gamification and then share my vision of how to approach its design, share my vision. But this is only partly true. In my critique of the definition, I built on criticisms that have come before me. And in my model, I critically rethink the models of other gamifier practitioners. So I think we can start. And by the way, Alexey, I'll ask you when I finish part one, I think it's good to give an answer to some questions, because it's a full part, and I think we needed to go further. Okay, part one. First, let's look at history. The term gamification was first coined by British video game developer Nick Pelling in 22. That's how he called the service offered by his tiny startup. The idea of startup was to apply gaming technologies in corporate services. A few people were interested in it then. The gaming industry was already rather large. Sony and Microsoft were competing for the players' attention. Online games were developing in full swing, but the gamers community itself still had quite limited scope. The idea of polling was perceived as a service from gamers to gamers. Therefore, it's not surprising that for some time gamification was simply forgotten. In 2008, people started talking about it again, and not video game developers, but representatives of the business environment. All this happened because of the fact that video games were now available not only to the gaming audience. 28 is a time of casual revolution in the gaming industry, coinciding with a period of distribution and popularization of smartphones. It was smartphones that made video games the property of a wide variety of groups, including those who had never played video games before. The popularity of such games just made people pay attention to them. Marketers were the first who immediately realized that such simple and yet entertaining game mechanics can help create extremely effective tools for attracting and retaining new audience. This time, gamification was not forgotten, but a sensation. By 2010, not only marketers, but also specialists in the fields of education, healthcare, tourism, and HR were talking about the importance and necessity of using gamification. It was during this period that the first gamification stars appeared. The most famous among them are Gabe Zickerman and Kevin Verbach. Zickerman is the author of the first popular thematic book, Verbach, a sensational online course in the Coursera platform, which at that time attracted the attention of the progressive public. In many ways, it was thanks to Verbach that a large audience learned about gamification, since it was his course that remained the most popular on the platform for a quite long time. Around the same time, an authoritative scholar, one of the first academic researchers of gamification, Sebastian Detarding, gave it a definition that eventually became a classic. Gamification is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. It would seem that everything is finally clear. To gamify a process means to make a game of what is not a game. There is some truth in this, of course, but as time went on, gamification began to be accused of manipulation. Its effectiveness began to be questioned, a variety of hypotheses began to be tested by researchers, and gamifiers tried to respond to criticism. As a result, by the middle of 2015, gamification was transformed, new stars appeared, it was now based on new values and guidelines. When I talk about new stars, I mean Jane McGonigal, Andrzej Marszewski, and Yukai Cho. Of course, one could also think of Sebastian Detarding, Juha Hamari, or Darina Dicheva, but I'm just talking about the tip of the iceberg. All of them proposed new methodologies for using gamification. They are different, of course, but they have common features. They insist on ethics, awareness, oppose betting on external motivation. All of them criticize the behaviorist interpretation of gamification, preferring the self-determination theory of motivation and basic psychological needs. It's one of the most popular psychological theory, not only in gamification literature, but also in game design literature in general. The classical definition has 4 basic defects that should be taken into account before we propose in our definition. So we here see the old definition. It's the third one, the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. I think it's a nice definition. It's not so bad. Moreover, I think it's good when you sell gamification to someone, when you give a lecture to some people who need who need to sell it. But it's not really good when we talk about the essence of gamification. And we have here 4 basic defects, and I want to show them, and then I want to transcend them. Firstly, if gamification is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts, then you might think that the use of video games in production or in education is also gamification. But this is not the case. Gamification in the field of so-called serious games created not for entertainment, educational, business, are 2 different phenomena. Serious games are quite classic video games. They are just created to achieve a very specific non-game goal. Gamification is not really a game. This is usually a digital application that uses only some techniques from video games. If we take education as an example, in different lessons, students can play the variety of video games in order to learn the material more effectively. In that regard, gamification is a tool, like a chapter from a textbook. In this regard, video games is a tool. My mistake, sorry. In this regard, video games is a tool like a chapter from a textbook or documentary film. In the case of gamification, the entire educational process turns into a game. This is not one of the tools, but the whole process turns into a game. Imagine that the student quite traditionally comes to the classroom and does homework, but now special points are given for the work in the gamification application. In this app, their avatar is leveled up, new territories are opened, or goods are purchased for decorating personal space, and so on. This is how I see the relationship of these areas to each other, these areas of game design. By the way, I can draw a little because, as I said before, I don't have really much time for the presentation. I'm sorry for it. I see it like this. We have here game means and game goals, and here non-game means and non-game goals. If we see here, it's entertainment video games for the PlayStation 5, for last Xbox, or so on. But we have another dimensions in this scheme. If we synthesize these fields, game means with non-game goals. This is serious games. Serious games, it's of course non-game goals, but we try to achieve it with game means, with video game means, games as a means. But if we synthesize these fields, I think it's more visual. So we have gamification because it's game goals and non-game. I'm sorry. This is gamification, this serious games, yeah. Gamification when we synthesize game goals with non-game means. So yeah, this is things non-game means with game goals. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Why? Because what is game goals? Some like we need to improve our city or improve our pet or maybe to escape from some problem within game. But to do it, we need to do a real actions, not virtual one. So this is a really different phenomena from serious games. Serious games and gamification are not equals. And by the way, I want to read these sentences about relationship of these areas to each other. If we combine game means and game goals, we get the well-known video games for entertainment, yes. If we combine game means and non-game goals, we get serious games. But if we combine game goals and non-game means, only then we get gamification. The game goal, for example, is to make your city the most prosperous. Non-gaming means to come to work on time, complete tasks, and so on. Secondly, it's a second defect of this gamification, the use of game design elements in non-game context. If we understand gamification in such way, we cannot see the difference between serious games and gamification. Secondly, the classical definition is silent about why anything needs to be gamified at all. Hence the suspicion, gamification is an implicit manipulation, an attempt to force a person to do something that is most likely not necessary to do. And although gamification is built on correcting human behavior, it's not so much manipulation as navigation. A modern gamifier cannot afford to think only about behavior. It's important for him to think about what a person feels when doing or not doing certain things. The task of gamification is not to force a person to do what they do not want, and it is impossible to force them, as research shows at all, but to help them to do what they are already forced to do in accordance with their role, student, employee, patient. The main goal is to help a person become better, more efficient, and healthier. Of course, this can still be called manipulation. But what does it give? We can also talk about education and nurture in such terms. And game design in general, isn't it a space of manipulation? Is it worth to reject video games because of this? Yes, in case of gamification, there is always a risk of unscrupulous use of game techniques. But it's precisely for this reason that the ethical side of the issue is being actively discussed today. Thirdly, gamification can be applied to anything, not only to non-gaming activities, but also to gaming. Contrary to the classic definition, I'm sorry. Contrary to the classic definition, games have also been gamified for a long time. The purpose is the same, correcting human behavior to make the player enter the game more often and play longer, so that the game does not bother them. Finally, I think it's understandable right now because finally, fourthly, it's continue of this third argument. Finally, gamification does not use the entire arsenal of game design techniques, but only those associated with the design of a metagame. A metagame is an additional semantic layer of the game, selecting which rules will apply during the play of the game itself. That is, it's not so much a game as a play. Indeed, every video game has both game and metagame components. In the game, you need to jump over obstacles, shoot at enemies, block their attacks. For example, in Space Invaders, we need to dodge enemy shells and shoot aliens who want to take over our planet. Other example is Death Stranding, where you need to deliver goods, trying not to lose them. In the metagame, we need to level up the character, look for hidden Easter eggs, and collect prizes. In the Space Invaders, metagame is associated with setting a record for points scored. And in Death Stranding, with trying to get the maximum score for the task, installing items that would give the player the maximum number of likes, finding unusual ways to use the received items. Indeed, why do video games add elements such as skill trees, in-game items, or a virtual store? Just in order for the game to gain additional meaning instead of simple game finish, replaying levels to improve the result, researching new opportunities of the game, and discovering the secrets attract players to stay in the game longer. Gamification is, relatively speaking, a metagame without a game. Instead of playing games, they are real, not virtual actions. Completing homework, delivering projects on time, closing a sales plan, and so on. A person does the same thing as before, studies, works, takes care of their health, but now it resembles a game by introducing a metagame component. After all, work or study is still a serious activity. It just adds an additional stimulating element that allows you to do it more effectively. So gamification is not just a tool for applying some unknown video games techniques in non-game areas, but first, a full-fledged methodology for working with human behavior, anti-behaviorist one. And second, a game design section dedicated to designing a metagame. Of course, we have another sections, rules and mechanics and game economy, narrative, level design, and so on. Therefore, my definition of gamification is a methodology for working with human behavior, the main characteristic of which is that the existing processes are complemented by a meta game. So part one is over. Maybe some questions if you have it after the first part, the scholastic one.
Well, actually, I had a question if you let me ask it. I just wondered whether it is just one clear way to differentiate between game mechanics and metagame mechanics, because, for example, you mentioned skill trees in RPGs. And, for example, I think, yeah, of course, if you design it in such a way so that it looks like, looks in such a way that you feel motivated to open more skills and so on, yes, I would say that it is like a metagame. But after you open up new skills, you anyway have some more opportunities in the game itself. So, so my question is whether it is so clear. Why it is so clear for you, for example, that these exact element is a metagame element and not a game element, for example. Yeah, for example, I'm absolutely sure that this leaderboard in Space Invaders and so on, or for example, just gaining more points for killing more other enemies. For example, I don't know, in Days Gone or in the Stranding is about going to improving the meta game. But if you have this improving in the game itself, why then is this game tree still a meta game element and not?
Yeah, really good question. Thank you, Alexei. I'll try to answer it. By the way, a meta game is a problematic term because we have meta game which game designer cannot design, meta game which designed by the player. But we have metagame elements which a game designer is designed. I talk only about them, not metagame which player creates. It's first factor. Second, yeah, it's really good example. Second example in such view is a quest or boss battle. Because we too cannot, in the first glance, we cannot differentiate between game and metagame. But I think we can do it. Why game tree? Why a skill tree is a metagame component? Because okay, it's a metagame component only when you finish the game, you can see that you are not opened all the skill tree. And you think, oh my God, I want to open this. And you start over video game because you want to end it. And this is a metagame component. Open up the whole picture. And maybe, yeah, and maybe you can gain an achievement or so on. But yeah, metagame skill tree as a metagame component is a component, the component which create a space for play where we can where we need to return to game if we want to see the whole picture. Okay.
Okay, I got the points. I understood what you mean.
And with quests, the situation is similar because quest is not the narrative quests, but the space of quests where you can see the whole of them, when you can see which you are already finished and how much you need to do in future and how much you need to do right now. The interface section is metagame. So yeah, in RPG, the section of quests is metagame, not because the stories which I give to player in game process, but as a navigation system and feedback system which could give a player feeling of what he has done. Okay, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is. I think.
Yeah, that was a good explanation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ksenia, you wanted to ask.
Yes, hello. I actually have a question about the manipulation, because as far as I understand, you said that gamification is not a manipulation. But for example, if we look at the free-to-play games, they are basically built on manipulation of human behaviors, this retention, their ability or willingness of the players to pay in the game. It's all based on the manipulation of humans' psychology and how our brain works. So my question is, isn't gamification can be the same? Because when we add gamification, not in educational programs, but for example, in some, I don't know, companies that strive for profit, they want their audience, their users to pay them in the end. So isn't this kind of looks like a manipulation when these companies at gamification to do so?
Yeah, of course, but we need to understand what we mean by manipulation. If we mean that manipulation is 100% evil, then I think we go to not non-right direction, because the whole culture is manipulation, education is manipulation, nurture is manipulation. So we need a more concrete way to speak about it. Yeah, of course, gamification can be evil. Yeah, but I think is really good point. But researchers already give us results, which we can see that bad gamification isn't work on long distances. Yeah, it is working in the, I don't know, in some first weeks or month, but then people start to think that system uses them. And this is not really good, because they start to sabotage the activity in which a gamification system is want to, in which gamification system, I don't know, вкладывается, this is really hard word for me right now. Okay, but I think you understand me. Gamification and people who want to use gamification want to use it just to rise the motivation, efficiency, and so on. And we know today that people who work good, sorry, this is really cynical in the way that this sounds. The people who work good is happy people. Yeah, in some kind of course, this manipulation too, but today corporation culture, corporate culture needs to make a space, happy space, because this is only a factor that people can do their work properly. So I think it's a really hard question. I really want to discuss it more deeply, because I need to discuss it deeply, and this is not the theme, not a topic of my today paper. But I think we need to go in the middle. From one side, we have some naive apology. Gamification is really good. It's about happiness and so on. It's of course not like this. But on the other side, we have another meaning. Gamification is always already an evil option. I think it's not really true either. We need a middle way, because this is the only way we can see the things, how they are really organized. Because I repeat, gamification is not something that marketers create. Gamification have its history in the history of game design, from board games to video games. And if we want to understand gamification, and if we want to understand how we need to do it, we need to study video games, not gamification apps. And I think it's really important thing. And if we think that gamification is always already evil, then the whole game design, of course, is evil too, I think. Okay. Thank you for the question. It's really we really need to talk about it. We really need to talk about ethics of gamification, of course, but it's it's a big area, and of course my topic is about another things.
So there was also a question from Maxim. Yeah, and I think it will be the last one for this first part, because we have two more talks after all, and so that's why we need more time. Yeah, Maxim.
Yes, thank you. Actually, well, you see, it wasn't that much of a question, but I just wanted to comment on one of the topics about, you know, that manipulation and the whole culture is manipulation and blah blah blah. I mean, I hate the whole notion, but the thing is that actually most of the time the line can be drawn, and it's not even that difficult. I mean, if you look at, I mean, you can say that if I make my goods and services so good that people come back time and time again, that it's manipulation, you know, because I make them like me, and so they return like, oh, okay, fine. But if we compare two games side by side, one of them is so well crafted that people recommend it to their friends, and well, and we can call it manipulation. I mean, we can, okay, but it makes no sense, because actually on the same like virtual store, we can find another game which makes people uncomfortable, which harms them psychologically, and then extorts money. Like you pay this game to stop torturing you, basically. So, and for most people, the line is so clear that they can see the elements of such torture as game design, like from the trailer immediately, and they keep distance from that games. So it is, so actually the line can be drawn easily, in my opinion, most of the time, at the very least. So that was my comment. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maxim. I'm totally agree with you. Yeah, my my answer from totality is not really correct. Yeah, I appreciate this comment, and I'm two things that we can draw the line between good and evil gamification, and I think because of it, we need to talk about ethics of gamification. But one thing that maybe I don't really like in last comments, that gamification is not free-to-play video game. Gamification is not the system which want more money from the users. Gamification, it's a motivate system for helping people to do some things. And if we look at the most and the four spheres where gamification is notably presented, is first is education, and school education, first of all. And I think it's not bad idea to help people to make more visible results with gamification system, if this gamification system is helping people to do their homework and so on more correctly. Second sphere is its healthcare, and I think it's not the bad one, because yeah, really we the people don't really often goes to the doctor, and why I think it's not a bad idea to gamify this process, to go to the doctors, to the medical centers and so on. And third, it's tourism and culture, because when you when you arrive to another city, of course you can you can confuse in such area and so on. I forgetting the word. And it's not so bad if you have a gamification app where you can understand the city, its culture points and so on, without an analog map, without and so on. Okay, because it's hard for me, I start to panic when I forget some words, and then it's like a snowball. Okay, so I think you understand me. And of course, HR. Human relations, yeah, in corporate services, company want to create an additional space for their users that them more visibly feel their opportunities, their tracks of development, and so on, because people don't know what company can give them. And from gamification apps, they can do it more visibly and have a feedback in the right time. Because I repeat, gamification is not a system of demotivation. In its essence, it's a system of motivation. And if gamification is not motivate, it's a bad gamification. And we, of course, know a few examples of gamifications that, of course, are bad and they don't motivate. They are bad from the start. We see them and we understand that this is a bad motivation. And of course, it's not working. And I think, yeah, it's really important. Okay, I'm sorry. So part 2. Okay, it's a hard one for me, but I'll try not to. It's for me really hard because I want to be not really abstract, but not really concrete, and because of it, it's a hard part. But I'll try. Okay. The second part consists of 2 subparts. In the first, I will briefly characterize gamification systems. And in the second, I will talk about the model that I'm working on myself. Well, let's start. Gamification systems can be built in very different ways. They can be both simple and quite complex in their structure. There are systems built around just one gamification element, such as points or badges. In the literature, such versions of gamification are called pointification and badgeification. Indeed, a model built on a single element is doomed from the start. The general principle of its work is clear from the very beginning. If it can captivate users, then obviously not for long. What should be the gamification system in this case? For a long time, practically until the mid-2010s, the so-called PBL gamification was considered the most reliable. I mean gamification built on the basis of 3 basic elements: points, badges, and leaderboards. These 3 elements really constitutes a sustainable system. Badges makes it clear when can be what can be achieved and how one can stand out. Points indicate how valuable certain actions are. Leaderboards celebrate everyone's contribution by comparing and matching users against each other. The result is a system of not only quantitative, but also qualitative feedback with a focus on the social component. Badge descriptions guide users to the necessary actions. For actions, users receive points. Points are converted into leaderboards. For success in performing actions and for tolling a leading position, users receive rewards. You can see the scheme on the slide. In the beginning, PBL showed extremely high results. It really corrected the behavior of people, increasing their productivity and efficiency. However, over time, it became clear that this effect does not last long. Moreover, after the decline in interest in gamification, user activity not only returns to pre-gamification indicators, but often drops below. Thanks to a whole series of studies, it is now known that PBL gamification only works in short-term projects. In addition, it only works where the level of engagement is high enough without gamification. By the way, this is one of the main reasons why PBL gamification is so effective in gaming services and products. In general, such gamification quickly becomes boring, and the strangest thing is that over time, the factor of external coercion comes to the fore. That is, at first, people seem to be playing, and then they suddenly realize that they have been used all this time. By the way, PBL gamification in some time was a synonym of gamification in general. It's, of course, a mistake too. Gamification is much more than PBL gamification. Indeed, PBL is built entirely on extrinsic motivation. That is, it is based on the assumption that simply adding an external stimulus, rewards or points, is enough to change people's behavior. Of course, it's not. All this led to the fact that in the field of gamification, there has been a movement towards completely new approaches based no longer on external, but on internal motivation. By the way, Alyosha asked me in the chat on the Facebook about motivation. And gamifiers uses a self-determination theory, and this theory is look at motivation not in a binary sense, because internal motivation is not something that can be external. External and internal, it's something that can be transformed to each other. So we can build a system that can internalize external motivators, and this is a good gamification, and we can create a systems that externalize internal motivation. This is bad gamification, because bad gamification, when people someone has internal motivation, but then external motivators, external stimulus are destroy the internal motivation and internal resources, because someone start to think, okay, I'll do it only if they give me some achievement, because anyway, I don't know to do it anymore. So yeah, we have a continuum of motivation, continuum of amotivation and internal motivation, where external motivation is one of the blocks in this scheme. Okay, all this coincided with the move from system-centric approaches to player-centric approaches in game design models. Therefore, as soon as PBL model was abandoned in the literature, everyone abruptly began to talk about users, their needs, and interests. It's not surprising that Bartle's typology became the main discovery at this time. Of course, all of you know this typology, and this is a really popular typology in 2015. And indeed, one of the most popular contemporary gamifiers, Andrzej Marżewski, built a whole theory on the synthesis of Bartle's typology and SDT theory, self-determination theory. As a result, his taxonomy, you can see it here as the theory, self-determination theory, and Bartle typology. And we have here 12 types of users. And as a result, he even identified 52 elements of gamification. However, almost all of them are selected based on his taxonomy of gamification users. Yukai does similar things. By the way, I really liked these models, and I really liked to deconstruct them, but of course we don't have the time for it, so I show this only an example. Yukai does similar things. His Actalysis is primarily a tool for designing users' emotions and self-awareness. That is, now we seem to have begun to understand for whom we do it and what we need to do, but how and with the help of what particular elements, this remains incomprehensible. This remains unclear. Every time, this applies not only to Marżewski or Cho, but also to Werbach, Zickerman, and many other authors, include academics. We see only open lists, just the lists of various gamification elements and mechanics that could be used, just like here. We can see list, and we don't see a system anymore. We don't see PBL was a system, but today we talk about users, we talk about user models, we talk about typology, their needs, and we talk about elements which can be used when they see fit. But system-centric approach is abandoned as I see it. At the same time, if we look at what gamification systems are actually offered, we will still find the familiar PBL. Yes, much more complex, but it's again at the heart of it. I don't think this is a coincidence. In fact, PBL is not so bad. It was just used rather narrowly at first. After all, the idea of any typology of users is that any element can be applied in different ways by different people. Therefore, the main lesson of player-centric approaches in gamification is the flexibility and plasticity of each element. Each element suggests many ways of use it, and I think it's really a nice idea. With this knowledge, I propose to return to the system-centric approach. For this is my approach. I think we really need gamification systems, and I'm sure that we can create one. But I know that some gamifiers think that we cannot do it, but I think we can do it. A whole system of gamification elements, the core of gamification practice. Okay, My system can be called a 4-layer system, but in lab, in Sber gamification lab, we call it G model. It's based on 2 axes. X, material, spiritual, and another axis is individual, collective. Why I choose this axis, this individual, collective, this material, spiritual. Of course, spiritual is not something spiritual. Spiritual is something internal. It's about how I see things, how I see myself, and so on. Material is something about visuals. If we level up, it's spiritual progression, but if we buy new clothes for customization our character, it's a material progression. I know this term's not really good, but it's a good scheme for me. I think it's really a nice scheme for visualization of gamification element. And by the way, I'm really sorry for the Russian-speaking picture. I don't have time to do it properly, so yeah, only Russian-speaking. Okay, so this axis need me only for visualization. Besides, it's not really need me. This visualization can give a feeling of what and how. What element how can be used. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not good at some formulation. Okay, all these elements, this is a whole picture of my system. And all these elements are divided into 4 layers. 4 layers because 4 colors. And each color is one of a layer. There is a base layer in some form, full or not full. It's present in any gamification system. The base layer is center. It's blue color. It's something in the middle of the whole axis. Okay, the rest of the layers are optional. They can be added together or one at a time. Moreover, it is important that each of them can be considered separately, since it forms its own system and can be designed autonomously. My main idea is that we have 4 systems of gamification: main system, spiritual system, material system, and collective system. Of course, I have another name for them, but just like that, we can have it. Okay, the base layer is the core of any gamification. I call it the feedback layer. In fact, this is my version of PBL, of course. This is a completely autonomous system that sets up the basic processes of promotion and training. This is where points, various insignia, badges, levels, ranks, statuses, and ratings enters. As I said, without this layer, you cannot build gamification. Because this is a system of feedback, but it is also often not enough. That is, all other layers are a kind of strategy for strengthening the gamification base, which is always a feedback system that allows users to track their progress and understand whether they are moving in the right direction. The first strategy is narrative one. It's a narrative layer. Its main idea is to turn interaction with the gamification into a full-fledged adventure, reminiscent of a real video game. First of all, we are talking about adding a scenario setting, vivid images, and visual metaphors. Points here can be turned into experience. Experience is narrative points. You can add development levels, skill trees, ranks, and titles. In addition, narrative gamifications are based on quests, bosses, avatars, pets, as well as personal space, which, for example, can be improved and developed. That is, the idea is to achieve an emotional connection of the user with the system in which points or badges are accumulated, not just for nothing, but for the sake of moving forward in the game scenario. The second strategy is economic. Its main idea is to deepen gamification by adding a full-fledged in-game economy to it. Points here are converted into virtual currency. Virtual currency, it's economic points. Stores filled with virtual goods are added. Items may go up and down in price, and various promotions may occur from time to time. By the way, economic layer is not a monetization layer. It's in-game economy. but not something about real money. Items may go up and down in price, and various promotions may occur from time to time, including the appearance of limited or seasonal items. If the narrative strategy focuses on the spiritual connection of the user with the system, then the economic strategy focuses on the material one. Here at the forefront is the opportunity to realize oneself as an owner, achieve material success, and feel richer than the rest. Again, solely for the sake of making points and rewards take on additional meaning in the user's perception. Finally, the third strategy is social. Its main idea is to turn the gamification system into a kind of social network. Clans and guilds are added, the user gets the opportunity to share statuses, and the points turn into an analog of likes, the number of which indicates the status and reputation of the user in the eyes of others. Each of these strategies focuses on strengthening and deepening the original system. That is, each of them in its own way answers the question, what is the point? The first turns gamification into a system of internal spiritual development. The second is a system of external material. The third is in the system of development side by side with other people. All of them, if necessary, can be easily combined with each other. Of course, I won't bore you with the enumeration of elements of the localization on the scheme. What I want to say before finish that this system is not all. I have some 30 elements in here, but this is not a whole system. Here I collect only what the user can interact with in the gamification system, but we can ask, what can user do? This is no longer a matter of elements, but a matter of mechanics, actions. I distinguish 11 types of gamification mechanic. Only 11. It's a full scheme. It's a full list, not open list, but full. Search, gain, accumulation, loss, collection, completion, interaction, conversion, customization, demonstration, choice. This is a whole list of gamification mechanics, which we can combine with gamification elements, which we see on the scheme. Of course, that's not all either. If we have points and we get them, then you can always ask how exactly this can happen. Here we can already have multipliers, penalties, and rewards for daily entry. So my system is from the core to the peripherals. That is my goal is a complete systematization of all the main components of gamification, starting from the core elements, mechanics, actions, elements of second level of reflection and so on to the users. And I really believe that it can be done. I'm finished right now. The main reason this hasn't been done before me, I think, is because researchers have been mixing game design techniques in general with techniques that are used in gamification. And I really see a lot of cases where this happened because game design elements, it's some elements from the game, but no, in gamification, we don't create games. We create a gamification system, we create a meta game system. And if we look at metagaming area, then we really can see some patterns. But if we understand that gamification is only about metagames, then we really have a chance to collect all the knowledge about metagaming and how to design it into a single global system. And indeed, metagaming techniques have not changed much over the past few decades. Indeed, they do not depend on genres, nor on the setting, nor in gaming platforms. They can be added to completely different games, and not games, of course. If we combine them with not games, then we have a gamification, yeah. But I repeat, if we want to understand how gamification works, we don't need to analyze the gamification application. We need to analyze how gamification layer works in the most famous video games, which create audience, loyal audience, and so on. In general, a brand new model of gamification system is already being actively built, and of course, I plan to continue to build it. Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry for my language. I know someone say sorry for the language if he talks something improperly, but yeah, my English is not so good. Okay, I know that we don't really have a time for questions, but if Alexei would permit it, then I, of course, try to respond.
Yeah, I guess it is quite possible to ask some questions right now, because we usually take more time all the time from talks, and yeah, we usually have 2 hours booked, so to say, for us for this seminar, and that's okay to use them. So does anybody have questions? Yeah, Nikita, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your speech, Alexander Sergeyevich. I have a question about, would you say that the idea like playing with serious things, like education, work, and etc., is a gamification? For example, a student can play with colors and fonts in his academic paper, or a tourist or a worker can play with his map navigator or folders, creating funny titles and making fun this way. So is it a gamification? And if it is, then what metagame elements we can see here?
Oh, yeah, it's a really good question. But I think we can name it gamification, but it's not really proper for the sphere in which we talk about gamification, because gamification is about digital games, digital application. But you say about the paper with text. I see the blank place, okay, sorry, and we can draw somewhere in between words and so on. Yeah, we gamify process. Yeah, and we are the people. We always create games. We always create games when we скучно, when we
are bored.
Yeah, when we are bored. Yeah, and if we want to create some meaningful space, we create game. And when we sit on the lecture, when we do some routine, homework routine or work routine, and so on, we can create from this. We can okay. We always transform place to place, and this how we do it. But this is not gamification in a more particular sense, because gamification, yeah, it's about digital game, it's about digital application. Because of it, it's more like Ludus than like idea. Of course, when we give our digital app to user can create his personal meta games, and this, of course, about idea. But we create the ludic space for him when he can see his activities as a games. Why we need it? Because when someone see his activities as a games, he I don't know why, but he can do it with more fun. Of course, yeah, we can return to ethics and say what things we cannot gamify in any circumstances. Of course, we have such spheres that I think we cannot gamify we never. Okay, we. we need gamification in some areas, of course, but we need gamification in another areas. Yeah. Okay. I hope this answer is okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, so does anybody else have questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add some comments about what Maxim was talking about. I think that it is not actually very easy to draw the line between manipulation and non-manipulation in our capitalist societies, because I think the situation with, for example, using gamification in HR that Alexander mentioned is actually almost the same thing as when you are choosing between two games, because as you remember, in our capitalist societies, we're also free to choose between different places to employ or not to employ. But anyway, we need to, anyway, of course, we remember that we need to choose, otherwise we could, I don't know, die because we don't have money and so on. But well, afterwards, you still have this opportunity to choose between a better situation and worse situation. Yeah, between a better atmosphere in the work, how is it, work climate. I'm not sure if it is used in this way in English. Arbeitsklima, I remember it in German. Yeah, with a good climate and work and so on. Yeah, so I don't think that it's really not almost the same thing in the situation, in the frame of choosing your workplace. So Maxim, yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, but in my opinion, human resources departments are probably the worst example here, because of course, if the human resources departments are I don't know, the departments which should establish the relationship between the owners of a particular means of production and workers for that means of production, well, of course, they must be the devices for manipulation. But again, I mean, it's not an utterance against manipulation here. It's rather an utterance against capitalism, really, because if, you know, those workers could govern their business themselves, then who would they manipulate? Themselves? I mean, it would have made no sense, right?
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to say that finally you still have an opportunity to choose. Well, of course, it is a very, as we remember from Marxist critics and so on, it is a very loose way, loose strategy of freedom. You have to choose between what slavery you would prefer and which office and so on. But still, it is an opportunity to choose between better work conditions or worse work conditions. And if you don't, I don't know, begin revolution and don't make all the means of production universal, then yeah, you almost have just one opportunity to the only opportunity left is to choose between gamified HR resources or non-gamified HR resources. And if it is good gamification, I think, yeah, if you feel happiness, maybe it is better. I don't know. Yeah, that's totally another discussion afterwards. So I just thought that it is not a great line, great difference between better or worse games or better or worse, I don't know, workplace. Yeah. After all, so that's just my thought. Yeah. So does anybody else have some questions?
And by the way, just commentary. The company need to choose between add gamification or not add gamification, but user needs to choose does he will be used it or not be. Okay, yes, I know I'm not correctly saying, but if someone if you do not use your gamification app, it's criminal. No, of course, it's really bad idea. Gamification is only for those who need it. But if someone don't need it, of course, they don't need to use it. Okay, I think you understand me.
Yeah, Daria, you want
yes, actually, I'm sorry, maybe I
yes, I'm sorry, we'll be the last one, and then we can go to the
maybe I can't listen all your speech because of my schedule, but maybe you speak about it. But actually, about gamification is not just about yes, working places or even education places. It's another big place of. But actually, I see that some form of gamification become parts of our everyday lives. For example, when the program starts to count our steps, how many steps we do during the day. And for example, I know about many different applications. One was implemented at conference, and actually it was conference about video games. And professor and researchers, they begin to move much more than they do before. They use this application that count their steps and insert it in game. And actually, it's not only about steps, but it actually was the example when people included in discussion that was far from their current topic, because they want to go to another rooms and something like this. Do you think that the very in our usual words, gamification is will be increased?
turn on.
I think it will be increased, yes, but also I think some progress in the field of how gamification need to be implemented. If we, it's not really an answer for your question, but I think it's interesting things to say. First, people who think about gamification is representatives of business culture. And this years of gamification is most boring and most primitive. But then in the gamification field, gamers start to think about it. Marzhevsky, Yukaicho, it's gamers. It's not a professional game designers and so on. And only right now, the gamification is the field where professional game designers can do something, and I think it's really important, because gamification right now is primitive. Anyway, primitive. I don't know how to say it. Okay, first systems of gamification is really primitive systems, which we can see the system, and we combine its system with points, badges, leaderboards. And we can do it anywhere, in education, in healthcare, in homework, in, I don't know, even in the relationships or in friendship, anything goes. But then we understand that this is too primitive systems, and we start to develop a system which can be implemented in the complex system, like CRM. Various management systems, educational systems, where we already have a big numbers of various types. And yeah, this is more interesting, because we can quantify not only some things like how much steps I'm doing, but things in more complex sense. Yeah, and this is more interesting gamifications, but we understand that it's only like something additional, not that I don't know how to say it. This is something that nice working even without it, and this is something too additional, too non. Words. Okay, I hope you understand me. And only right now I see that gamifiers talk about that we need to do a whole gamification system from start to finish locally for some activities that we can produce, not for anything, not for anything, not something that can be implemented anywhere, but we can set some area. Then we need to understand the problems in this area, and only then we start to develop a system of gamification, reminding the whole video game. More reminded, something like a video game, because it's not something only additional, but it's something that creates a whole experience through the interactions with it. I'm really sorry if I'm not, if it is not the answer of your question. Thank
you. It's very interesting. But for example, I want to ask, and what about Star Wars? I think that it was many years ago, but for me, just a good example of gamification at office when Sith Jedi's way, or it's not a good example for you.
We need to see. I don't know about this particular example.
I think it was 2017. I think it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm here about it, but I don't know how it was created through the lens of people who created. Yeah, so only from marketers' papers. Yeah, it sounds nice, but I don't know. We need to check this thing.
Yeah, thank
but
you.
But I'm not really like the term evangelist, but I don't know, but I can't create the synonym right now. Evangelist of game design in gamification. That this is not the sphere for gamers, but for professional game designers who understand how we create good video games. And if we can make good video games, then we have much more chances to create good gamification. But right now, gamification is for the любители, for the
amateur.
But not for professionals. And I think we need to change it if we want to create gamification that works.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, it's very interesting, but I understand the time is over. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank Alexei. Thanks everyone. It's really good for me to be with you tonight. Yeah, as I said earlier.
Thank you too. But don't you were talking as if you would disconnect right now, but don't do it, because we have 2 more talks by the participants of the seminar. So Nadezhda Gerasimenko, please, you are here, as I see, and the title of your talk is, as I remember, Elements of Simulation as Gamification. It's not as I remember, but as I read it right now, actually. So if you are ready,
put demonstration right now.
So you have 15 minutes in general, so just use it as you would prefer.
Okay. So can you see the presentation? Okay. Well, I wanted to thank Alexandra for his beautiful talk, and I think that my presentation would be a logical continuation of it in some ways. So the topic of my talk is elements of simulation as gamification tools, and this theme is closely related to the pandemic era that brought us a lot of new ways of communication, and several programs like Zoom or Microsoft Teams became popular, but also several brand new programs were released. And the most unusual projects of this sort are Microsoft Mesh and Metaverse by Meta, both announced last year. In brackets, as far as I know, Mesh right now is released only in beta version, and Metaverse is released but doesn't have all the planned functionality yet. So in my talk, firstly, I want to quickly describe these projects and then explain what both of them have to do with gamification and how these projects can be improved. So Microsoft Mesh is a platform made for work-related collaboration. It creates a mixed reality space where people project their full-body customized avatars and can share 3D models, 2D files, and so on. They can talk and move freely also. So Mesh is a lot like Microsoft Teams, but it uses AR technology. The developers announced that one would be able to connect to Mesh meetings with the use of common devices like PC or phone, but I guess that a lot of functions would be accessible only by GoLens 2, a special, very expensive AR set produced by Microsoft. The second project I would like to talk about is the Metaverse by Meta, formerly known as Facebook. This is a VR platform that is announced to be the Matrix-like reality connected to all the social platforms owned by Meta, which are Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. And the Metaverse will consist of 3 separate spaces: Horizon Home, Worlds, and Workrooms. To put it simply, Home is a private space that imitates the real-life home of the player. Worlds is a collection of spaces used for gaming and socializing. And workrooms are a VR version of conference room, as you can see on the slide. And it's also important to note that Meta plans on integrating personal workplaces into this VR world. And as I understood from the video presentation of Meta, these workspaces will look very much like personal computers, but they would be situated in the VR. So both Microsoft Mesh and Metaverse are simulations of work meetings or hypothetically real life in general, but they are not gamificated systems because the only video game-like element in them is a customization of the avatar, and also there are games in Metaverse, but they're integrated into the world like separate experiences as games on Facebook, for example. But I argue that there is more potential in similar elements of simulation used as gamification tools. Of course, this is not a new idea, and the main sector of such games that use simulations actively are business simulations. They represent some kind of problem-solving situation or particular parts of the work process. They're used mainly for testing workers or educating them. I've got a screenshot here with a small syllabus of works like video games that of this type. So they're something well experimental or used for education. But although regardless of such games efficiency, I want to know that they are used infrequently. They are not integrated into the everyday working routine. But as also, okay. Sorry, I put this with my presentation.
So you need some help, or you even said that that's end or not? I just maybe overheard you. No. Nadezhda, I'm sorry, I think we have some technical issues about connection. Can you hear us? Yeah, I think something went wrong finally with the presentation of Nadezhda, because I guess it was not over after all. And so, how do you think, should we wait until Nadezhda re-enters the chat room again or not? Or can we continue and move towards the second talk? Yeah, okay, then let's wait. Okay, so then let's wait about 2-3 minutes, I guess. Well, just to fill this pause, I just wanted to announce that next time, in 2 weeks, there will be a talk given by Yaroslav Shvel at this conference. As I remember, he will be talking about games behind the Iron Curtain, because it fits more the topic of the connections between different game cultures. Yes, that's what we arranged. Yeah, let me see it. Yes, that's it. Sorry for the problems. It will happen. So Nadezhda just wrote, made a comment in our Facebook group. She said she's had some technical difficulties and she hoped that she would be able to reconnect in a few minutes. Well, so I guess actually we've been waiting for 5 minutes. I think it would make sense to change the plan. I mean, to change the role in which our participants are giving their talks. So, and maybe Tatiana could give her talk before Nadezhda. So Nadezhda is already here. So she.
Yes, I'm very sorry.
So okay, yeah, please go on then.
Okay, sorry, my computer decided to shut off for some reason. Okay, I will not turn on the video because I'm scared now. So I'll just talk to you. Okay, so I've talked about Microsoft Master and Metaverse. I think I will not repeat it. And I've already said that all these web universes are not gamificated. They just simulate reality. And well, to put it simply, they are not gamificated systems. And also, I've said that simulations have been used in gamification for quite some time, and mostly in business simulations, but they are not used daily in such spaces, more like an experiment or part of education, but well, they are not integrated into their daily routine. So I think that as Alexandra said also, it's important to keep in mind that today gamification works more with helping people rather than motivating them. And I think that's important to create gamification systems that will help people daily. And well, as we know, one of the main psychological problems of the pandemic era is the lack of socialization, and shared experiences in general. It's also quite common to argue that the system of online workspaces and learning will stay with us even after the COVID. So I assume that modern simulations should aim to create shared virtual workspaces where people can communicate freely and express themselves, like Mesh and Metaverse plan to do. And right now, I'd like to briefly describe my concept of simulation useful in the work environment. It's obviously not complete, and I'm not a game designer, but I, anyway, from a theoretical point of view, would like to emphasize on several points that may be useful in the future. So first of all, as I've already said, this virtual space should be integrated into the working routine in order to actually connect people. So as in other games, people should have a reason to visit this space regularly. Second, this place should be easy to access and interact with. And here comes the first difference between this space and Mesh and Metaverse, because I think that it's still very hard to get accustomed to VR and AR technology. And also, these technologies are still a luxury. So I argue that it's very inconvenient as for now to use them in working space on a regular basis. So it's better to stick to regular digital spaces accessible through computer. The second difference is linked to the actual design of the virtual spaces. And I think that one can argue that there's no need to create an accurate copy of an office like Mesh and Metaverse try to do, because, well, in my opinion, it's really depressing. And I think that it's possible to create something more interesting and exciting when a copy of an office space. And the same thing can be said about avatars, because why should we imitate reality when we can present ourselves in more creative ways? But what is helpful about Mesh and Metaverse is the idea of collecting different work-related problems together. Of course, it's convenient to have documents, presentations, and so on in the same accessible space, like in the Google Drive. So as the fifth point, I argue that gamificated simulation should have these features integrated into it, or which is much more easier to have direct links into Google Drive, for example. But the main question remains, what can make such a simulation gamificated? I think that the answer to it is an interactive customization process and the process of caring for the digital environment. This idea relies highly on the Animal Crossing franchise, obviously, but as we've seen, such mechanics are engaging, calming, and they leave just enough space for communication and self-expression. And finally, kind of in brackets, I would also like to say that workspace simulation shouldn't have microtransactions, unlike Metaverse. And I wouldn't go deeply on it right now, but it's simply unnecessary. Having microtransactions, I mean. So as a result, we can imagine a regular working day in such a simulation. For example, you turn on the PC, log into the app, and for example, send your avatar to care for the garden while you write a text for a presentation. And after that, you sell the collected vegetables to the in-game shop, buy yourself a new plant there, go to the meeting in the center of a village. Your boss and colleagues are standing there talking through the voice chat, and all of them have different animal-like avatars, so they wear weird-looking clothes or something like that. After you exchange your in-game items with your colleagues, for example, and go fishing while reading documents and so on. So I think that sounds like a calming and unusual experience, at least. And it's just one variant of it, because I'm basically doing Animal Crossing because everyone knows Animal Crossing. But this leaves a lot of space for fantasy. And at the end of my talk, I want to briefly expand on the theoretical framework of this project and the impact it can make on the working processes. So it's impossible to talk about simulation without the monographs written by Ian Bogost, and I will not retell them, as I assume you're familiar with them. But within my talk, it's necessary to focus on one process that he describes, and it's the simulation fever. So there's always a difference between simulation and reality, and Bogost calls the space of difference the simulation gap. If the player is not in a matrix-like situation, they are able to feel the simulation gap and reflect on it. The process of reflection is called simulation fever, and it is a situation of crisis and questioning both rules of the game and of reality. As a result of experiencing simulation fever, the player can agree or disagree with the representation in simulation. And depending on their choice, they can change the way of framing reality, or in other words, contextualize it differently. So the concept of simulation fever is really important for the topic, because gamificated simulation systems can make the working process less routine. They can create conditions for active reflection. For example, recently there has been added a personal boundary feature to the metaverse, and it's a space around every player that cannot be reached by other players. Obviously, this innovation makes people think about the existence of personal boundaries in their non-digital lives. And it doesn't make people follow the rules of keeping others' non-digital personal spaces safe, but at least it makes people think about such a possibility and form an opinion about it. So I think that this correlates a lot about with the topic about manipulation we had earlier after the Alexandra's presentation. And in the working process, the simulation fever effect can be used in different ways. It can make people think about their mental health, well-being, for example. So For example, there's an NPC named Social Bunny in The Sims 2, and he comes to characters that need socializing. An NPC of similar nature can come to the workers that had been locked into the simulation for too long, or something like that. And there are also numerous possibilities to shape the in-game communication. I'm also returning to the personal boundary case of the metaverse. And this is just examples. There's much more game design possibilities about it. So in conclusion, I want to repeat that there's a great potential in integrating simulation into the working process on a daily basis. This may sound utopian, but we can already see that big companies like Microsoft and Meta have taken steps into quite similar direction. And but if such simulations will be created more critically and will follow the main ideas of modern gamification, they would be able to not only digitalize work-related communication, but also create a space for reframing it, reflecting on it, and making it more ethical and ecological, I think. So that's all I wanted to say. Got a small list of references, and would be glad to take part in discussion.
Thank you, Nadezhda, for your talk. And if somebody has some just really small question to Nadezhda, so please ask it. But we don't have so much time. Sorry. Well, there were some technical issues, but nevertheless, sorry. So if there is no question, then I guess if there are still some questions or some just comments, you may send it to Nadezhda in the Facebook, because we all are the parts of the same group in Facebook for this seminar and so on, and it is possible to talk directly to each other, to to send messages to each other after. And then let's move to the second talk that will be given by Tatiana Popova, that wanted to share her experiences about gamifying some course, some classes, as I understood.
Yeah, good evening. So, one moment. So, good evening, everyone. A few quick things about myself. Could you see my screen? Yeah, thank you. A little bit about myself. Well, I teach psychology and sociology of mass media at St. Petersburg State University of Industrial Technologies and Design. Also, I hold a master's degree in digital culture and media production at School of Advanced Studies, and I have been working for an advertising sphere more than 15 years. So I finished my master's degree just last year. The topic of my final research is gamification in higher education. Of course, I'm interested in theories of gamification, but I'm even more interested in a real life and practice oriented, because I work in higher education. So we decided to develop an interactive prototype of educational game for bachelor degree students majoring in advertising and public relations. So because we conducted some research before it, we did some interviews and focus group of students and interview with educators. So we created an interactive novel, New News, using Twine. Twine is a free and open source tool for making interactive fiction in the form of web page. There is a goal. The student should get a job, and after internship, let me show me a piece of my prototype. So, one moment. Yes, here it is. It's an introduction about this game. You are a trainee at New News Publishing House. Today is your first day. You are about to get into trying to remember everything you have studied on my course and learned well. It's time to put your knowledge into practice. Let's do it. So, and there are some situations which connected with some skills and knowledges required on my course, are connected with psychology of news, touching agenda, etc. And student should choose some situations, and there is one right answer, of course, and if a student choose right answer, he or she received some points. For example, this or this, etc. So this game was created instead of boring test, and in the end of the game, the student can receive a theme of essay if she or he didn't receive enough points. Of course. So what lesson did I learn? It was sometimes very difficult to do some academic theories fun or funny. Yeah, and every time students make their choice, they prove their knowledge and skills from our course. We tried to use some professionalism, some jargons in game to do it funny, and we conducted some tests. 20 students played these games and they were satisfied and would like to play more, of course, and they don't like boring tests. Such games can be used in another course and can be a full game, yes, and can translate into English or applies for another topic. So the application of gamification in higher education will intensify and be effective in education. And also it could include some group work or some projects. And it can include some stages to do log lines, synopsis, characters, to do conflicts, choose a plot form, conduct some research, schema, do prototype and connections, to do approbation, and then final build and release. Some reference, and thank you for your attention. So I would like to vote about gamification in higher education. I sent a link in chat. And could you ask the question? One moment. Yeah. Please answer. Is it opened? Yeah.
You want us to do it right now?
Yeah. And we will see answers. You can type one or some words. No? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I actually combined both negative and positive answers because I didn't understand the meaning of it all, but anyway. Okay, so
Just word cloud, yeah.
Yeah, but word clouds are always beautiful anyway.
But interactive and visual.
So did I understand correctly that the talk is over right now?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you then. And yeah, just wanted to ask if you consider this game gamification itself, or rather a serious game or educational game that you created, because for me it's more seemed to be more an educational game than gamification itself. Yeah.
Yes, it's a difficult question. I waited for such a question. I guess it's an educational game, or a part of it could be a part of gamification system. If I would like to gamify all my courses, sociology and psychology of mass media, it could be a part, a test part or final part of some themes. But now it's a prototype of educational game. But it has some mechanics, it has points, it has choices, it has fun, it has some activities. It could be more gamified. And it's digital.
Yes. So that's
what do you think?
I'm sorry?
What do you think?
About the game itself?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't play it, but so it's quite difficult to say, to tell if you didn't play itself by yourself. Yeah, but if anyway, if it worked better than tests when you compared it with them, then bravo, then why not? So does anybody else have questions to Tatiana? Or no? Okay then. Yeah, and Tatiana, do you are you working right now also in St. Petersburg, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So and how do you feel it there? I just want to ask because I just want to know, because I used to give lectures also in SAS when you were studying there, and Alexandra as well, as I know.
Yeah.
And so that just so I'm just curious if it's if you are fine there and so on. If the workplace is all right there and so on after too many and so on, or does it seem to be boring after SAS and so on?
Thank you for your question. No, after studying at SAS, I started to be more interesting teacher, I guess, because my experience is broader than another, and our school is really up to date, yeah, than another university or schools. And that is why I'm really interesting teacher and interactive, and I try use all my stuff that I received. This year, I suppose we try with students to do some board game touching my course, sociology and psychology of mass media. We will try it. I guess it would be interesting more than do some presentations or do some discussion about something theories. Yeah, of course. Thank you. And earlier I don't like video games, but now I know a history of video games. Thank you, Alexander. Yeah, thank you, Alexei. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you as well for your talk. If there are no questions to Tatiana or to Evgeny, to Nadezhda, I'm sorry. Yes, no questions. I think then we can finish for today. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alexander, Nadezhda, Tatiana, for your talks. Again, I will use this option of the reaction here and to give applause to you all. And again, I repeat that in 2 weeks on February 21, we'll have a keynote talk held by Yaroslav Shvelov on games behind the Iron Curtain, games in Czechoslovakia and so on. And yeah, please, I hope if you have some criticisms about the seminar and in general, so please contact me on Facebook. And yeah, thank you. Have a nice evening then.